Welcome to Interactive Storytelling. We are now starting the fifth set of videos, which focuses on the interactor. Let's start right away and see what's in store for us. I will talk about three topics, which are based on Murray's aesthetic categories for interactive media. The first category is agency. Agency makes it possible for the interactor to have an effect on their fictitious experience. Whatever the interactor chooses to do should ideally have a meaningful result in the story world. The second category, immersion, is an essential requirement for any experience. When the interactor faces something in the story world, they should be willing to buy in and treat it as if it's real. Third of Murray's aesthetic categories is transformation. It goes deeper into the interactor's psyche and allows them to take a role outside of their normal range. Being no longer confined to their physical, cultural, or economical limitations, the interactor can be whoever they choose to be. This time, we will focus on agency. Let's recall an earlier illustration on interactive range and agency. The interactive range is the whole collection of actions that the interactor could take on a given situation. This is what the platform and the story world together offer to the interactor, and there's nothing outside of this range that the interactor can do. In this example, the interactive range of the case on the left is greater than the interactive range of the case on the right, because the interactor has more actions to choose from. Agency doesn't concern on the actions, but the uniqueness of the reactions. In this example, the case on the left has a lower agency than the one on the right, because there are fewer unique reactions to the actions. Plainly speaking, this means that no matter what the interactor chooses, many of the actions don't actually bring any new reactions. Balancing interactive range and agency is difficult. On one hand, it seems better to offer the interactor true choices and to have high agency. On the other hand, having a variety of choices enables the interactor to feel that their choice is individually unique. If the interactor can choose whether they want, for example, to bribe, threaten, or sweet-talk the guard to let them pass, it makes the choice of action unique and personal, even though all of them lead to the same reaction. We'll see soon why agency isn't always a necessary requirement. When talking about agency, the dominant view is to see agency as free will. As Murray puts it, agency is the satisfying power to take meaningful action and see the results of our decisions and choices. This is the distinctive experience that an interactor has as they interact with and affect the story world. Having a freedom of choice, being able to choose a certain path or viewpoint in which the story will progress, can be considered as the minimum requirement for true interactive storytelling. Although free will has been a dominant view towards agency, it has been criticized. For instance, agency can be seen related to the intention of an action instead of the outcome of an action. Both the interactor and the designer have their own intentions, and they're engaged in a type of a conversation with each other, mediated by the platform. For this reason, it's critical to establish trust between them so that agency becomes possible. The interactor needs to trust that the story world is interpreting correctly the expressed meanings. In addition, the story world needs to train the interactor to perform meaningfully. When you look closer at agency, it shows different facets depending on your standpoint. I will present next different perspectives to agency. Let's start by discerning two types of agency: theoretical and perceived. In theoretical agency, we look at the interactor's objective ability to act and change the outcome of an event within the story. For example, the interactor could have 3 choices. Each of these choices would lead to a different outcome. This is enough for theoretical agency. The interactor is offered choices, and all of them lead to their own relevant outcome. What could be wrong with that? In perceived agency, we focus on the interactor's subjective perception of their ability to enact such changes in the story. We are not concerned what objectively is available to the interactor to choose. We are interested in how they perceive their possibilities to make a change. It could be that they don't understand the outcome of a choice, or that they see it totally differently from the theoretical agency. While theoretical agency is commonly regarded as an ideal, it would be better to focus on the perceived agency. The interactor might be totally unaware of the possibility of making a choice, although theoretically the choices are given to the interactor. In other words, there is theoretical agency, but, for example, bad design hinders the interactor becoming aware of it. We can also discern local and global agency. Local agency concerns meaningful actions that have an immediate and observable effect. Global agency concerns actions that have repercussions observable only later in the story. For example, the interactor can take a look back at the end of the story and see the connection between their earlier choices and the final outcome. The difference is the lifetime of the consequences of an action, which can make global agency difficult to observe. Invisible agency is a special type of agency. Here, the interactor's subconscious actions can have agency. In practice, this means that the platform tries to make a psychological mapping of the interactor. This can be realized, for example, by tracking their actions when they are not aware of making choices. If the interactor keeps looking at a picture of their character's deceased lover, the platform can deduce that they are feeling sorrow and mark it down on the psychological mapping. The interactor might not be aware of this quasi-subconscious agency that they have, but these actions can be used to predict how the interactor feels about the other characters and change the story world accordingly. The context always dictates the interactor's agency, and breaking this context renders interaction nonsensical and meaningless. This is the idea behind limited agency. The interactor is never facing the same situation, but the context makes them different from one another. The range of choices is therefore never really the same, but the context dictates which action can have a meaningful reaction. In limited agency, the interactor is provided freedom to choose between contextually important options. Having too much freedom and too many choices leads often to uninteresting and unimportant actions. It would be now logical to ask the question, what happens if we take limited agency to the extreme, where there's no or hardly any agency? We could have a story world with randomly placed content. The interactor could go through this content in whatever order they want. They would have agency in navigating through the story world, but no effect on the unfolding of the story and the outcome. Curiously enough, the agency experienced by the interactor is not necessarily in relation to the real depth of agency. The interactor may experience a deep sense of agency without having a real agency at all. A linear story offering a wide interactive range, but where all choices lead back to the same, could provide the feeling of agency, or rather pseudo-agency, for the first time. If the interactor never returns to the story world and tries to start over again, they might never know better. But the subsequent visits would naturally reveal the true state and the lack of real agency to the interactor. Limiting doesn't have to be crude, but it can be hidden by providing an illusion of agency. This means accommodating the interactor's action on certain points. The expectation that the interactor has on the outcome of their agency can be changed to be more suitable for the story's needs. Of course, this can lead to unexpected or illogical situations where the interactor doesn't see anymore the connection between their choice and the subsequent events. The key here is communication. Even if the actions fail, the interactor will retain their sense of agency when the platform acknowledges and explains why they failed. We've gone through different perspectives to agency. Let's try to recap and put them in some kind of an order. First of all, agency is often seen as a possibility to express one's free will. In theoretical agency, we look at the situation objectively. It doesn't matter how the interactor perceives the situation. The important thing is that they are given actions to choose from, leading to unique reactions. In perceived agency, we take the interactor's perspective and acknowledge that subjectively agency can look different. The interactor's perception can focus on local agency, the immediate reactions to the actions. In global agency, the chain of events can be longer and the consequences of actions might show up much later. In invisible agency, the platform tries to map the subconscious decisions that the interactor makes. If agency doesn't correspond to free will, we can call it absence of agency. Limited agency offers the interactor a possibility to use their free will, but the context might limit the range of choices given to them. If the interactor has hardly any possibility to make real choices, we have a case of no agency. The illusion of agency tries to hide limitations by leading to different outcomes than what the interactor might have expected. As you can see, dealing with agency is not straightforward. We could aim at providing the highest possible theoretical agency, such as the case with the full branch in StoryWorld we saw earlier, and run into trouble both in implementation and the interactor's subjective perception. Of course, such a StoryWorld would allow the interactor the maximum amount of re-experiencing, because they could every time make new choices and experience unique new stories. As we saw, having no agency doesn't necessarily mean that the interactor experiences no agency at all. But re-experiencing the story world would reveal the lack, as the events would happen the same way regardless of different choices. Like in many other things, the sweet spot is probably somewhere between these extremes. Where exactly? Well, that depends on what the interactor wants and what we want to offer them. Agency was the first item on our list. In the next video, we move on to the second item, immersion. See you there.